The first time the Galactic Council observed Earth, they thought it was a mistake. They believed no intelligent life could thrive on such a dangerous planet. The atmospheric conditions were erratic, with storms that could tear apart entire cities, hurricanes that swallowed coastlines, and tornadoes that shredded everything in their path. The planet's surface was constantly shifting, with earthquakes splitting the land open and volcanoes spewing molten rock capable of wiping out civilizations. The temperatures fluctuated wildly, scorching heatwaves followed by brutal winters, all within the span of a few months. The Council dismissed Earth as a death world, a place where no species could reasonably evolve into a spacefaring civilization. Yet, the humans did. At first, the Council assumed that humanity had somehow found a way to tame their planet. They had not. Instead, they had adapted to it. They built cities in the path of hurricanes, constructed homes on fault lines, and lived alongside rivers that routinely flooded. Rather than fear the unpredictable nature of their world, they accepted it, prepared for it, and rebuilt each time disaster struck. No other species had shown this level of resilience. The Council watched with growing unease as they studied Earth's wildlife. The planet was filled with apex predators that should have kept human numbers in check. Yet, rather than be wiped out, humans dominated. They encountered creatures with razor-sharp teeth, venom potent enough to kill in seconds, and raw strength that should have made them superior. But humans found ways to outthink them. They developed weapons, traps, and tactics that turned the hunters into the hunted. Within a few thousand years, humans had exterminated, tamed, or driven into hiding nearly every major predator on their planet. No other species in the galaxy had done that. The real horror began when the Council studied human physiology. By galactic standards, humans were unremarkable at first glance. They lacked natural armor. Their senses were mediocre compared to most species, and their physical strength was nothing extraordinary. But then, the Council saw what made them different. Humans could take damage in ways that no other species could. They did not collapse under injuries that would be fatal to most life forms. Their bodies healed at an alarming rate. And even when they lost limbs, they continued to fight. They suffered broken bones and still found ways to keep moving. They endured hunger, thirst, and exhaustion for days, sometimes weeks, without breaking. Their pain tolerance was beyond anything the Council had witnessed, but it was their adaptability that frightened the galaxy most. Humans thrived in places no other species could. They climbed to the highest mountains, where oxygen was too thin to breathe. They swam in freezing waters and marched through deserts with unbearable heat. They built civilizations in the deadliest regions of their world, where other species would perish. Humans found a way to survive. When humanity finally reached space, the Council assumed they would struggle. Instead, they thrived. The extreme conditions of their homeworld had prepared them for the void. They endured radiation, gravity shifts, and prolonged isolation better than any species before them. They colonized barren moons, built stations in the emptiness of space, and ventured into regions of the galaxy no one else dared explore. The Council's fears were confirmed when humanity encountered its first hostile alien species. A war broke out. It was expected to be over within weeks. Humanity, after all, was new to interstellar warfare. They had weaker technology, fewer ships, and little experience. But instead of breaking under pressure, humans did what they had always done. They adapted. They studied their enemies, learned from their tactics, and adjusted their strategies with terrifying speed. They turned their weaknesses into strengths, using their endurance to outlast sieges and their ingenuity to turn seemingly hopeless situations into victories. They fought in conditions no other species could withstand. When their enemies tried to use biological weapons, humans developed immunity. When energy weapons were introduced, they created armor that absorbed the blasts. They never fought the same way twice. Every battle taught them something new, and every war made them stronger. The council convened after the war's conclusion. They had seen enough. The galaxy had faced countless dangerous species before, but never anything like this. Humanity was not the strongest, fastest, or most advanced race, but they were, without question, the most terrifying. They could not be broken by their environment, their enemies, or even by their own limitations. They changed, they endured, and they always found a way to win. The decision was unanimous. Earth was to be classified as the most terrifying planet in the galaxy. Its inhabitants had proven themselves to be the most relentless species ever encountered. Warnings were issued to all intelligent life forms: avoid human-occupied space at all costs. Do not engage them in conflict. Do not challenge them. Do not provoke them. But by then, it was already too late. Humanity was no longer just surviving in the galaxy. They were thriving. The decision was unanimous. The Intergalactic Council had analyzed every possible candidate, reviewing countless data logs, expedition reports, and first-hand accounts. After much deliberation, the title of most terrifying planet was awarded to Earth. It was not a decision made lightly. The Council had explored worlds filled with molten lakes, crushing gravity, and endless storms that could rip apart the most advanced starships. There were planets where the air was poison, where radiation bathed the landscape in a permanent, lethal glow. Yet, none of these compared to Earth, a planet that, on the surface, seemed harmless compared to the lifeless wastelands of the universe. It was only upon closer examination that the Council understood the true horror of Earth. The first reports came from the few alien species that had dared to explore the planet. The initial findings were puzzling. Earth had a breathable atmosphere, abundant water, and vast biodiversity. It was the kind of world that should have been classified as a paradise. But it was not a paradise. It was a death trap unlike any other. The first problem was the sheer variety of life. Unlike most inhabited planets, which typically had a few dominant species, Earth was a battleground of constant evolution. Its creatures were not just diverse but hyper-aggressive and relentless. Every inch of the planet was occupied by life that had spent billions of years fighting, killing, and adapting to survive. No species was safe from another. Even the plants could be deadly. Some produced toxins that could paralyze or kill in minutes, while others ensnared and digested living creatures. The insects alone were enough to make hardened explorers flee in terror, swarms of them capable of overwhelming and devouring a being in moments. Then there were the predators. Earth's apex hunters were unlike anything seen elsewhere. They did not rely on simple brute force like the massive beasts of other worlds. They were intelligent, strategic, and unrelenting. The great cats could move silently through dense terrain, their muscles honed to perfection. Wolves operated in packs, coordinating attacks in ways that baffled even the most advanced AI. Even the ocean was not safe. Earth's waters housed creatures with rows of serrated teeth, capable of sensing a single drop of blood from miles away. And yet, none of these creatures were the reason Earth had been declared the most terrifying planet. The real horror came from one species: humans. The Intergalactic Council had records of aggressive, dominant species across the universe, but humans were something else entirely. They were not the strongest, fastest, or largest creatures on their planet, yet they had dominated every environment they encountered. They had no natural weapons, no claws or fangs, but they made up for it with something far worse: adaptability and intelligence. Humans had spread to every corner of their planet, from the freezing poles to the scorching deserts. They thrived in environments where no other species should have survived. When nature threatened them, they did not submit. They fought back. They reshaped their environment, tamed fire, built weapons, and developed technology that allowed them to turn even the most hostile landscapes into homes. They were never satisfied. Unlike other species that reached an equilibrium with their surroundings, humans constantly pushed forward, always seeking new ways to overcome challenges. They turned mountains into cities, carved tunnels through solid rock, and defied gravity itself, launching themselves into the sky and beyond. Their ability to wage war was unmatched. Unlike other warlike species, who fought over simple territorial disputes, humans fought for abstract concepts, ideologies, beliefs, and power. They engineered weapons that could wipe out entire populations in an instant, developed strategies that exploited every weakness of their enemies, and fought battles not just with brute strength but with deception, patience, and ingenuity. If they could not win conventionally, they found another way. They would turn the environment itself against their enemies, poison supplies, or fight wars of attrition until their opponents simply collapsed. They did not fear death. History was littered with stories of humans who stood their ground against impossible odds, who fought to the last breath rather than surrender. They were willing to destroy entire civilizations just to ensure their own survival. And the worst part? They were only getting stronger. Unlike other species that plateaued in their development, humans only advanced further with time. Their technology improved, their tactics evolved, and their ambitions grew. They had already begun expanding beyond their homeworld, reaching for the stars with the same relentless drive that had allowed them to conquer Earth itself. When the Council officially announced Earth's title as the most terrifying planet, there was no ceremony. No species wished to celebrate such an acknowledgement. The decision was met with silent agreement, and an unspoken understanding passed through the galactic community. Earth was a world best left undisturbed. Warnings were issued across the stars. Travel to Earth was strongly discouraged. The few who had survived encounters with humans were advised to share their stories, to make sure the rest of the galaxy understood the danger. And for those who still considered the possibility of invading, of testing humanity's limits, they were reminded of one simple fact. Humanity had never lost a war, and if pushed, they would not hesitate to remind the universe why Earth was truly the most terrifying planet in existence. The first time the Intergalactic Council put together a list of the most dangerous planets, it was meant as a warning. Every known world was analyzed based on its environmental hazards, predatory species, disease potential, and general survivability. Many assumed the title would go to some radiation-soaked wasteland or a gas giant with storms so powerful they could tear apart a fleet. Instead, the most feared planet turned out to be a small blue world in an unremarkable solar system, Earth. On paper, Earth should not have been anything special. It had oxygen, water, and a moderate climate, ideal conditions for life. But as the survey teams dug deeper, the reality of Earth became clear. It was a death trap on every level, a planet so hostile that survival was more a matter of endurance than luck. The weather alone was a nightmare. Unlike many habitable planets with stable climates, Earth's weather was unpredictable, violent, and often lethal. It had hurricanes the size of small countries, tornadoes that could tear apart entire cities, and blizzards so cold they could freeze a living being solid in minutes. Wildfires could rage for weeks, consuming everything in their path. Earthquakes reshaped entire regions, and volcanic eruptions could blot out the sky for months. But it was not just the weather. The biology of Earth was relentless. Predatory species stalked every environment, from the depths of the oceans to the highest mountains. There were creatures with venom that could kill in minutes, others that hunted in packs with ruthless efficiency, and even microscopic organisms capable of destroying entire populations. Then there were the diseases, countless invisible killers, constantly evolving, adapting, and spreading. The same virus that might be harmless one year could mutate into something deadly the next. Even the strongest immune systems from other species had no defense against the sheer variety of pathogens Earth produced. And yet, none of this was the real reason Earth earned its terrifying reputation. The true danger was the dominant species, the humans. Humans were unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. They were not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most naturally armed creatures. What made them horrifying was their ability to adapt, to survive, and most of all, to fight. They thrived in every environment, from deserts to frozen wastelands, deep jungles to the open sea. They endured extreme temperatures, relentless storms, and constant threats from their own world. And when nature did not challenge them enough, they created their own threats. No other species waged war the way humans did. They had turned combat into an art, developing weapons capable of devastating entire continents. But more than their weapons, it was their mindset that terrified the Council. Humans were not just willing to fight, they sought out conflict, adapted to it, and learned from it. They had fought wars for thousands of years, refining their tactics, perfecting their strategies, and pushing the limits of destruction further with each generation. It was not just war. Humans had an unmatched ability to endure suffering and keep going. They survived wounds that should have been fatal, adapted to losses that would have broken other species, and rebuilt from destruction as if nothing had happened. They did not just endure hardship, they thrived in it. When the first alien species made contact with Earth, they had assumed humans would be easy to control. Instead, they barely survived the encounter. Even unarmed, humans had a way of resisting that no other species did. They refused to surrender, refused to accept defeat, and even when captured, they found ways to turn the situation to their advantage. The more the Council studied humans, the more they realized that this species was something unique, something dangerous beyond comprehension. They were the only species known to turn their entire planet into a training ground for survival. Even their entertainment revolved around violence, endurance, and competition. They pushed themselves to the limits for sport, sought out the most dangerous creatures to hunt for pleasure, and willingly entered deadly environments just to prove they could survive. When the final report was presented to the Intergalactic Council, there was no debate. Earth was officially declared the most terrifying planet in the known galaxy. The decision was unanimous. No species wanted to risk an invasion. No empire wanted to provoke a war. Earth was not just dangerous, it was untouchable. And so, while other worlds were monitored for potential conquest, Earth was marked with a warning: do not approach, do not interfere, do not provoke. Because while the storms would pass, the predators could be avoided, and the diseases might be cured, there was no escaping the wrath of humanity. The Intergalactic Council had never seen anything like it. For centuries, thousands of planets had competed in the annual Galactic Survey, a study meant to assess the most extreme environments, the most intelligent life forms, and the deadliest ecosystems in the known universe. And this year, for the first time in recorded history, one planet had stood out above all others. Earth had been crowned the most terrifying planet. It wasn't a title given lightly. The judges had spent years collecting data, sending probes, and analyzing every recorded encounter with the planet's native species. They had explored countless worlds, some covered in molten rock, others ravaged by constant radiation storms. They had seen carnivorous plant life, oceans filled with acid, and creatures that could crush starships with their jaws. But none of that compared to Earth. The first thing that stood out about Earth was its sheer unpredictability. Unlike many stable, habitable worlds, Earth was in a constant state of chaos. It was a planet where natural disasters weren't occasional tragedies but common occurrences. Every continent faced threats ranging from hurricanes that could tear apart cities to earthquakes that split the ground like paper. Volcanoes spewed molten rock into the sky, wildfires consumed entire landscapes, and tornadoes ripped through settlements with no warning. The weather alone made Earth a death trap. But the environment wasn't the only reason Earth earned its title. Its ecosystem was designed for survival at all costs. The predators on Earth were unmatched in their adaptability and efficiency. Creatures with razor-sharp claws, venomous fangs, and nearly supernatural levels of speed and camouflage roamed freely. Some species, like crocodiles and sharks, had remained virtually unchanged for millions of years because they were already perfect killing machines. Others, like humans, had evolved into something even more dangerous, a species that could adapt, innovate, and overcome anything. Humans, by far, were the most terrifying thing about Earth. The Intergalactic Council had studied intelligent species before. They had seen civilizations that built great empires, designed sophisticated technology, and explored the stars. But no species had ever displayed the sheer level of resilience, aggression, and unpredictability that humans did. They weren't the fastest, the strongest, or the most heavily armored. But they didn't need to be. Humans had survived on a planet that was trying to kill them at every turn. Instead of dying out, they had learned to use fire, build weapons, and create shelters. They had hunted creatures 10 times their size, crafted tools that could cut through the toughest hides, and developed tactics that turned them from prey into apex predators. They learned to farm, to manipulate the environment, to thrive in conditions no other species would dare attempt to settle in. They mastered the oceans, conquered the skies, and even set foot beyond their own atmosphere, all without the help of another advanced species. The most unsettling part was that humans didn't just survive hardship, they embraced it. Wars, plagues, famines, natural disasters, none of it had stopped them. If anything, these obstacles had made them stronger. They fought among themselves constantly, pushing their own limits, creating new technologies at a pace that alarmed even the most advanced civilizations. They turned destruction into opportunity. When they weren't fighting each other, they were exploring the most inhospitable places on their planet simply to see if they could. They climbed the highest mountains, plunged into the deepest oceans, and crossed burning deserts with nothing but their own ingenuity. Even in space, where other species carefully calculated every move, humans took risks that made no sense. They launched themselves into the void with experimental technology, using metal capsules barely strong enough to withstand the journey. They landed on their own moon, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to. They built machines that traveled beyond their own solar system, sending messages into the dark, hoping that someone, something, would answer. When the council reviewed the reports, they came to a chilling realization. If humans had done all of this on their own, with no outside help, what would they become if they were given access to advanced technology? What if they were introduced to interstellar war, political conflicts, or species with far greater knowledge? Would they conquer, as they had always done? Would they adapt, growing even stronger with each battle? Would they become unstoppable? The decision was unanimous. No other planet had come close. Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. And humans? They weren't just survivors. They were something else entirely. When the official announcement was made, most species took the warning seriously. Trade with Earth was limited, diplomatic relations carefully controlled. Some species argued that humans should never be allowed to leave their planet, that they were too dangerous, too unpredictable. Others believed that working with humans could be beneficial, as long as they were handled carefully. No one wanted to be on the wrong side of history when it came to Earth. And as for the humans? They laughed. They celebrated the award as if it were a badge of honor. Because, in the end, they had always known the truth. Earth had never been a place for the weak. It was a world that forged strength through hardship. And now, the galaxy knew it too. The universe had many dangerous planets, but only one had earned the title of the most terrifying,